an interesting book that I read several years ago. This is back in the time of the Dwemer. Azura and the Box. It's not even that long of a book. Azura and the Box. Ancient Tales of the Dwemer, Part 11. By Marable Sewell. Now, if I remember right, he is a long extinct Dwemer, since they're all gone from Tamriel, or I should say from Nirn? Mundus? Perhaps all of the Orbis? I don't know. Nobody knows what happened to them exactly. Okay, so if I can read this name right. Niclabar had enjoyed an adventurous youth, but had grown to be a very wise, very old Dwemer, who spent his life searching for the truth and dispelling superstitions. He invented much and created many theorems and logic structures that bore his name, but much of the world still puzzled him, and nothing was a greater enigma to him than the nature of the Adrian the Daedra. Over the course of his research, he came to the conclusion that many of the gods were entirely fabricated by Man and Mer. Nothing, however, was a greater question to Niclabar than the limits of divine power. Were the greater beings the masters of the entire world, or did the humbler creatures have the strength to forge their own destinies? As Niclabar found himself nearing the end of his life, he felt he must understand this last basic truth. Now, his name could be Chillbar, for all I know, and the end could be silent, but I'm just going to go with Niclabar. Among the sage's acquaintances was a holy Chimera priest named Athenic. When the priest was visiting Balthag, this is an old Dwemer ruin in Morrowind. I recognize it from the name. Bethalag Zertamaz, Niclabar told him what he intended to do to find the nature of divine power. Athenic was terrified and pleaded with his friend not to break this great mystery, but Niclabar was resolute. Finally, the priest agreed to assist out of love for his friend, though he feared the results of this blasphemy. So I'm having a bit of a difficult time. Obviously it was. Dwemer lived among all the other races. It's just an odd thing to write that Ultimer was a friend to a Dwemer. But, you know, I've read about Nerevar. He was a friend of the Dwemer high priest as well. Athenic summoned Azura. After the usual rituals by which the priest declared his faith in her powers, and Azura agreed to do no harm to him, Niclabar and a dozen of his students entered the summoning chamber, carrying with them a large box. As we see you in our land, Azura, you are the goddess of the dusk and dawn, and all the mysteries therein, said Niclabar, trying to appear as kindly and obsequious as he could be. It is said that your knowledge is absolute. So it is, smiled the Daedra. You would know, for example, what is in this wooden box, said Niclabar. Azura turned to Athenic, her brow furrowed. The priest was quick to explain. Goddess, this Dwemer is a very wise and respected man. Believe me, please, the intention is not to mock your greatness, but to demonstrate it to this scientist and to the rest of his skeptical race. I have tried to explain your power to him, but his philosophy is such that he must see it demonstrated. If I am to demonstrate my might in a way to bring the Dwemer race to understanding, it might have been a more impressive feat you would have me do, growled Azura, and turned to look Niclabar in the eyes. There is a red-petaled flower in the box. Niclabar did not smile or frown. He simply opened the box and revealed to all that it was empty. When the students turned to look to Azura, she was gone. Only Athenic had seen the goddess's expression before she vanished, and he could not speak. He was trembling so. A curse had fallen. He knew that truly, but even crueler was the knowledge of divine power that had been demonstrated. Niclabar also looked pale, uncertain on his feet, but his face shone with not fear but bliss, the smile of a Dwemer finding evidence for a truth only suspected. 2 of his students supported him, and 2 more supported the priest as they left the chamber. I have studied very much over the years, performed countless experiments, taught myself 1,000 languages, and yet the skill that has taught me the final truth is the one that I learned when I was but a poor young man, trying only to have enough gold to eat, whispered the sage. Wouldn't that be poor young Mer? As he was escorted up the stairs to his bed, a red flower petal fell from the sleeve of his voluminous robe. Niclabar died that night, a portrait of peace that comes from contented knowledge. Publisher's note. This is another tale whose origin is unmistakably Dwemer. Again, the words of some Aldemaric translations are quite different, but the essence of the story is the same. The Dwemer have a similar tale about Necklabar, but in the Dwemer version, Azura recognizes the trick and refuses to answer the question. She slays the Dwemer present for their skepticism and curses the Dwemer for blasphemy. In the Aldemaric versions, Azura is tricked not by an empty box, but by a box containing a sphere which somehow becomes a flat square. Of course, the Aldemaric versions, being a few steps closer to the original Dwemer, are much more difficult to understand. Perhaps this stage magic explanation was added by Gore Phelim because of Phelim's own experience with such tricks in his plays when a mage was not available. Marable Sewell left even the character of Necklabar alone, and he represents many Dwemer virtues. His skepticism, while not nearly as absolute as in the Aldemaric version, is celebrated even though it brings a curse upon the Dwemer and the unnamed house of the poor priest. Whatever the true nature of the gods, and how right or wrong the Dwemer were about them, this tale might explain why the dwarves vanished from the face of Tamriel. Though Necklabar and his kind may not have intended to mock the Aedra and Daedra, their skepticism certainly offended the divine orders. Well, that's a bit of a stretch. I don't believe that that's the case. I mean, I would have thought that this story would have happened when the Dwemer were... Well, I mean, it could have been at any time when they were still around. No one's even exactly sure why the Dwemer disappeared from the face of the world. But I don't think it was this. I think definitely would have noted that in here if Azura had suddenly made all of the Dwemer just disappear. And I don't think that the I don't think the Divines would allow such a thing just to happen unless the race themselves or someone within their race did it to themselves. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.